So the NFL quarterback carousel just keeps on going in circles. We have Marcus Mariota signing with the Atlanta Falcons. We have Jameis Winston re-signing with the New Orleans Saints. And we have Matt Ryan being traded to the Indianapolis Colts. Now, before we get into the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and let's just jump right into the video. Now, the first two news stories, I'm not going to spend very much time on it. We're just going to hit the quick notes for these stories. The first one we have is Marcus Mariota signing with the Falcons. This is significant because obviously we'll get into it later. We have Matt Ryan being traded to the Indianapolis Colts, but we have Marcus Mariota with the Atlanta Falcons. He signed a 2-year contract with them, and he just gets to work with his former coach Arthur Smith, who he worked with in Tennessee. So those guys are very familiar with each other. That should at least expedite the process a little bit, help them get on the same page a little bit quicker. Mariota knows who he is, knows the offense that he likes to run. So the chemistry with the head coach and quarterback should help them move quicker, and they'll be hopefully able to move on to bigger and better things much quicker to help improve this team, because as we'll get into it, the Atlanta Falcons need a lot of help right now. In the next story, we have Jameis Winston re-signing with the New Orleans Saints. Now, he did sign a 2-year, $28 million contract with the Saints, $21 million guaranteed, obviously, over those 2 years. In 2021, in 7 games, he had 1,170 yards, 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. The numbers really weren't that flashy. He was under 200 passing yards per game. I mean, the Saints really weren't asking him to do very much because of all the issues he obviously had in Tampa Bay. He had a whole bunch of touchdowns, but he threw 30 picks. He had like 33 touchdowns, 33 interceptions. So they wanted to limit Jameis Winston, and it looked like in the games that at least I watched, they were forcing Jameis Winston to do the little things. They weren't allowing Jameis to do anything big. Now, obviously, he's coming off that injury, but with the way that the NFL is right now, quarterbacks are very slim. There isn't very many. So obviously, I think the best option for the Saints was to bring back Jameis Winston, some guy that already knows the organization, already knows what they like to do. Yes, Sean Payton's gone, but Dennis Allen knows Jameis Winston. He was the quarterback last year. So hopefully this is the right move for the Saints going forward. But if they can ever upgrade in the future, I'm sure they would love to do it. But right now, Jameis Winston back in NOLA, best thing for them. And then we have the biggest story of the day. We have Matt Ryan being traded to the Indianapolis Colts. Now, in this trade, it is kind of big, and it feels like, to me, it has the most impact of all the news that came out today. In this trade, the Falcons get a 3rd-round pick from the Indianapolis Colts, but they take a massive hit when it comes to their cap space. They take a $40.5 million cap space going into next season. That's just absolutely insane. That's the most in NFL history. The fact that the Falcons were willing to take on a cap hit that big is just, it's nuts. It's absolutely insane to me. I don't know why any team would actively kill their own cap situation by doing that, but whatever the Falcons want to do, they can do it. But I find that to be very dumb. And obviously the Colts, they get Matt Ryan. And for me, I think it's a great move by the Indianapolis Colts after moving off of Carson Wentz after that last season that the Colts had. And for the Indianapolis Colts, I think they did a good job with their draft picks. Originally, I thought the Colts kind of got a steal for Carson Wentz. Originally, I thought the Falcons got a steal for Matt Ryan from the Falcons, only sending them that 3rd-round pick. But the more you think about it, it's kind of just the Colts reinvesting the draft picks that they got, because originally they lost a 1st-round draft pick to Philadelphia for Carson Wentz. And then when they traded Carson Wentz to Washington, they got 2 3rd-round picks, and then they swapped 2nd-round picks, and then they used one of those 3rd-round picks, and they sent that to Atlanta to get Matt Ryan back. So the Chris Ballard of the Indianapolis Colts did a great job reinvesting those picks, using those picks in a great way, because after losing a 1st-round pick for the disastrous way that the season ended last year, Jim Irsay, the owner, was not very happy with the way the season ended last year, and rightfully so. Frank Wright and Chris Ballard wanted Carson Wentz to stay, but Jim Irsay was just done. He was sick of it. He wanted Carson Wentz gone. And so that's why this move here is being made. For me personally, I thought it was kind of irrational by the Colts to move off of Carson Wentz so quickly when they did it. But, I mean, I can understand the frustrations coming from that front office. You know, a team that the year before went to the playoffs with Phillip Rivers with almost the same lineup and build as the team that Carson Wentz had, and for them to flame out in the final week against the Jaguars. And again, when the Jaguars fans were dressing up like clowns to make fun of their own team, it's not a good look for that team. But for the Colts, they really want some consistency at the quarterback position. This is the 5th straight year that they've started a new quarterback, and for that organization, I'm sure they want at least Matt Ryan there for a couple years. They don't want another year to go by and then them starting another quarterback going into week 1 of next season. Now I can see Matt Ryan only being there a couple years, then they move off of him and then go after, one of these quarterbacks that are in the draft in a couple of years, because right now the draft class isn't very good. It's not very deep. I don't think many teams are very high on the quarterbacks that are there right now. But for the future, the quarterbacks are going to be getting a little bit better in a couple drafts from now, maybe next year after that. So maybe after that they can go after it. But for at least a couple of years, for the Colts' sakes, I think they need to stay on a quarterback for a couple of years. Yeah, Phillip Rivers was only there for a year, but he retired. Carson Wentz, that didn't go the way they wanted it. They moved off of him. But now they have Matt Ryan, who, again, I think is a great pickup for them. And I think that has a chance for them to honestly make the playoffs. Yeah, there's things that the Colts have to fix, but in that division where they had to face Trevor Lawrence, Ryan Tannehill, and Davis Mills, I think they honestly have a fairly good chance of competing in the division. The Colts have a very good defense right now. I mean, the defense was kind of disappointing in that game against the Jaguars, but again, 11 points on offense. You can't really blame the defense when the offense literally isn't doing their part of the game. But I do think that the Colts have a good chance of competing in that division now, possibly making the playoffs, even though the AFC is a dogfight. And I really do feel bad for Matt Ryan being traded into the AFC, because that conference is just absolutely insane. It's nuts. And then you have the NFC South right now. Tom Brady is just sitting there laughing because he just give Tampa Bay a playoff spot right now. Literally, like, they had it before them, but just give them the division crown. Like, Tampa Bay is winning the division next year. If they don't win the division, the NFL is doing something stupid and causing Tampa Bay to not win it. Tampa Bay is winning the division next year. But if you look back at Matt Ryan, I don't think he was anything close to the reason why the Atlanta Falcons weren't successful last year. Like, it wasn't a fairly good season, for the Falcons as a whole, but Matt Ryan, for what he had to deal with, almost a 4,000-yard receiver, I think that's pretty impressive for what Matt Ryan did, especially at his age. The offensive line in Atlanta was not particularly good. Matt Ryan didn't really have as much protection as I'm sure he would like for a guy that can't move. He didn't have any protection. And his best receiver, his most productive receiver, was a tight end who was a rookie. And that's never a good thing. Like, if it was a rookie wide receiver, okay, yeah, that's fine. Look at Jamar Chase in Cincinnati. That's perfectly fine. But if you have a tight end who is your most productive receiver, that is not good. He was thrown to Russell Gage, who, I'll admit, Russell Gage played well. Now he's on to Tampa Bay, getting Tom Brady another weapon. But he was thrown to Russell Gage, throwing to a rookie in Kyle Pitts, and then Cordell Patterson, who, again, he earned himself some money. He's a guy that can literally do everything. I like Cordell Patterson, but I mean, what do you have? You have a rookie tight end, a wide receiver that kind of had no choice but to step up, and then you have a gadget guy. Matt Ryan, the talent there, those three guys on paper sound fairly good, but at the same time, Matt Ryan had to do a lot last year for the Falcons for them to be even remotely to be even considered a competent team. And the fact that they even won 7 games last year it's nuts to me. They're not even a team, because I thought they were a bad football team, and then you look at the end of the year standings and it's like, oh, they won 7 games. So good on Matt Ryan for making the most out of a terrible situation in Atlanta. And now he gets to move on to the Colts, who obviously have a better offensive line, and you get to play with Jonathan Taylor. You're telling me that Matt Ryan isn't going to have a fairly solid season when he gets to hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor all the time? Jonathan Taylor, my God, he turned into everybody's favorite player in the NFL. The dude was explosive, making plays left and right. Turned out to be possibly the best running back in the entire NFL. If Derrick Henry is healthy next season and still has it, that battle between Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor in the same division of running backs, that's going to be something very special. I think we're all going to love watching that battle back and forth all year long next year. But he gets to hand it off to Jonathan Taylor. But the Colts, I'll be honest, I'm not going to downplay it. It looks like the Colts definitely need some help at the wide receiver position, because Michael Pittman was the only guy that was really productive last year. He was the only guy even close to, something that we would love to see from a wide receiver. He had over 1,000 yards. But the next closest guy was nearly 700 yards less than that. The next guy had like 384, I think, that Michael Pittman had just a little over 1,000, like 1,034 yards. It was a very small number. They're definitely going to need help on that front, but it's a good start for Matt Ryan. He gets to move to a team that has a very good offensive line, a great running game. At least they have one wide receiver that they know that he can work with. Now they're just going to have to go really big in the draft. They're going to have to get a really good wide receiver to help out Matt Ryan and to help out that team who, again, a couple years ago, made the playoffs with Phillip Rivers. If I'm the Colts, I'm going in with the same expectations. You're getting a former NFL MVP. You're getting a guy that you could argue should have a Super Bowl ring. So if I'm the Colts, I'm going as big as I can in the draft, trying to get as much talent to surround Matt Ryan with to hopefully make a push into the playoffs.